Warm.
Yes. Yes, keep it warm because let me turn my phone down. It is surely cold out there. Well, I want to say good evening. Get ready to say good morning. Good evening to you. And we are here for week 2 of Intro to Christian Worship. And today we are, so for those students who are watching the video, make sure you go to the week 2 module. And let me see if I can share that. Excuse me, real quick. Excuse me. So remember, for the week 2 module, you want to make sure that you complete. I'm having a couple little issues here, everybody. I want you to make sure that you complete week 2's discussion. I'm having some issues with sharing. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get it up here. They do all these updates on these things, so I'm gonna make sure I get it right and I'm showing my screen right. Let me try this again. Now I can't find it. Okay, y'all stay right there. I'm having an issue with sharing my screen. Everybody stay right there. Okay, while I'm going to talk a little bit, I apologize. I'm having a little issue with sharing my screen. So this week's week 2 discussion, you don't have an an additional assignment, but your discussion for this week is to read those pages in chapter 2. I did have a few pages that I was able to copy, pages 47 through 49. I want you to read that closely as well in chapter 2. Read all of chapter 2, but I want you to pay attention to 47 through 49 in Susan White's book, Components of Christian Worship, everybody. So for my students who are watching the video tonight, I want you to make sure that you, in the discussion forum, make sure that you pay attention to the role of instruments. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. What role do instruments play in enhancing worship experience? And then make sure you mute your microphone for me, please. And then what types of instruments may be used? You can give me some examples. And also, within your week 2 discussion, what biblical evidence can you provide that speaks to instruments being used in worship in the Bible? Okay, and that is, might take you a little bit of research there, but that's what it is. I want you to make sure that, hey, good evening, Brenda. Make sure that you are doing your reading, and also remember to pay attention to your syllabus for your discussion question length if you have any questions about that. So make sure that you're also posting, and then you are responding to at least 2 classmates, okay? All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. I want you to just please give me a little bit of patience here. I'm having trouble sharing my screen. It seems that Teams did an update. I'm gonna try this one more time. Also, the PowerPoint is located within, let's see if I can do this a different way. The PowerPoint is located within week 2. And I did this last week and I had no problems. So let me see if I can do it another way. Okay, students, let me know if you're able, okay. Let me know if you are able to see my screen, and it should say instrumental music in worship. No. Okay, great. Something's going on,
Yeah.
and Thank you, everyone. Something's going on with the screen, and I'm not sure if this is going to work because it's pretty small to me. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger, okay? Sorry for all the technical issues. It seems like, you know, my thing is when things work, leave it alone. So, but it looks like there's an update to Microsoft Teams, and within this update, I don't like it. So, oh dear. My dear students, are you able to see it? But it looks very small to me. It looks big to you, Mr. Smith? Okay, say it again. I can't hear you. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Oh, okay, you're muted. Mr. Smith, you're muted.
Oh, I say yes, it looks regular to me.
It looks regular to you. All right. Okay, well then that's good. Now this is strange. I apologize, everybody. There's an update with Microsoft Teams and I don't like it. It's very small on my side, but that's okay. I want to make sure that you all can see it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about instrumental music in worship tonight. And we are going to come from chapter 2. Good evening, Brenda. I'm glad that you're with us tonight. Okay. And please let me know as I move along if you're not seeing the PowerPoint. Okay. And then I'll try to do something a little bit different. I'm so sorry about this. All right. Let me know if you see these 3 young men and they have an instrument. They're playing an instrument. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. Let's talk about, actually, I want to do a little review. Let's see if we can remember from last week. So in this particular class, we're talking about worship, this whole issue of last week, we talked about certain scriptures that mention worship. So first, let's start with, let's see if you can remember a few things that Susan White said about worship. See if you can remember anything from last week. Here's one. Remember, she said that worship is done in community. She said community. Let me put it in the chat. Let me see if I can put it in the chat here. Community. Does anybody remember that Greek word? It started with a K. That's okay. Let me see if I can put it in here. Koinonia. See if I can spell it right. Koinonia. There you go. And remember that all of this is from last week. And so koinonia, meaning fellowship or community, that's the Greek word. Okay. Anything else we can remember? So that's one. Anything else we can remember from Susan White last week? We had about 3 or 4 things she said that worship is like, or worship is. It's a lot. Say it again, Mr. Smith.
Mirror, the mirror of heaven.
You got it. You got it. Tell us what that
means.
means.
It's coming back up. Short service. Yeah.
Mirror of heaven. I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody. All right. Okay, what do we mean by mirror of heaven?
The worshiping God. So in heaven, the angels worship God. And so we are sort of reflected that, mirroring that kind of worship to God.
There you go. There you go. A reflection. Let me pull my chair up here. A reflection of what heavenly worship looked like.
Mhm.
We looked at Old Testament and even in New Testament of what heavenly worship would look like. The operation of angels, their situation was to what? Worship the Creator God. All right, very good. What were some other things we shared from last week? And Susan White said that I'll put it like this, what did worship or what should worship do for an individual? What did she say?
To affirm our faith.
Okay, yes, it does. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm gonna put that in the chat. Affirm faith, good. And think about how she mentioned in our lesson last week, she says that I'm trying not to give it away. It kind of lifts the person,
Mhm.
kind of transforms the person.
Oh
And she,
yeah. In a different
and
dimension.
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It ushered the person into a different dimension. Very good, Miss Davis.
Yeah.
Now, did she mean like they were in space? They were in outer space somewhere? What does she mean by
Oh,
this different?
oh no. They were, they were in the church, but they were ushering in, the worship through what they were doing, the instruments that were being used.
Okay.
Also, once you, the thought that once you enter the presence of God, and that the worship actually brings you into present, and therefore there's sort of, you could think of that as a different dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different dimension, meaning, or different space, right?
Yes.
Meaning that the person, this individual, is experiencing the Creator God somehow. Yes, they're still on earth, right? They're still in the same state. They'll still be in the same building, but moving into a different, even I'll say it like this, a different mindset sometimes also. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, here's here's one thing I want you to remember from last week. Then we're gonna pick up right here on chapter 2. Also, remember Susan White said that worship is transcendental. And I know I'm gonna spell that wrong word wrong. Worship is transcendental. So meaning that, like we said, we had this transcendental God that is not concerned about material things, but the individuals worship the Creator through experience, worship the Creator through spirit. Okay, not necessarily concerned about tangible things. Okay. Also, remember she said that worship was for the insiders.
Yes. Right.
What did that mean?
That the worship experience basically are those that already have a relationship with God.
Okay.
So, and we can invite outsiders, if you would, into a relationship with God. And once they're in that relationship, then they understand the worship process. So they understand worshiping.
Yeah.
There's the desire to worship. There's the desire to worship, I guess you would say it like that.
Desire to worship. There you go. Very good. So I want you to understand as we go through, if anybody new is joining us, worship was for the insiders, Susan White said, but meaning that nobody was ostracized, that the people had to get out, but really the way worship is designed and the language of it is designed for those people who understand it. The language and things is understood for those people who have relationship with the creator God. That's why, you know what? That's why worship services can be very confusing for individuals because they're not quite sure, like, what are you talking about? You almost need a dictionary to figure like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost need like a cheat sheet so they can figure out what you're saying. And if they don't have anyone next to them that can explain things, what happens?
They're confused,
Mhm.
probably. And also, they, like you said, they don't understand what's going on, so they really can't
Right.
get into the worship experience.
Right.
You know, sometimes it allows, it causes them to be a little critical. And, you know, questions like, is that necessary? Is all that
Right.
necessary? Because
Oh,
I've
yeah.
often heard that kind of a phrase, well, it's not necessary to do all that. And
Mhm.
a lot of that comes from a lack of understanding of not only the relationship, but just the workings of the Holy Spirit to some degree.
Oh, very good. Very good. All right, everyone. Good review from last week. Let's go ahead and jump right on into chapter 2. We're going to jump into this with both eyes open. So let's look right here. Let's look at the Old Testament worship. We know that Old Testament worship used instruments. And let me see if I can share my screen. We're going to go to Numbers, the Old Testament book of Numbers, chapter 10. The Old Testament book of Numbers, chapter 10. If you give me 1 second, let me see if I can change my screen. While we are, let me hit stop share. My goodness, let me see here. Yeah, they've really stopped. They've really done something different on this. All right. So what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can share this. And we're going to go to Numbers, Old Testament book of Numbers. What did I say? Chapter 10?
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 10. Chapter 10. All right, good people. Let's see if this is going to work for us. This is the weirdest thing, how this thing changed. And now, all right, I think I can get it now. Oh, ooh. All right. Hopefully you can see that. Let me know if you can see my Numbers chapter 10 up here.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Okay. Excellent. Woo, we're working. All right. Now let's look right here. The font might be a little small, but let's look right here. It said, let's see what we can pick out. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, make 2 silver trumpets. Uh-oh. All right. So that's one. We see trumpets right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we see any more. Okay, verse 5, it says, and when you blow an alarm, the camps on the east side shall set out, blow the second alarm. So they're using trumpets here. Let's see if we see another one. So I see trumpets. Okay. Also in verse 10, also on your days of rejoicing, at your appointed festivals, and at the beginnings of the month, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over your sacrifices. Okay, so let's write that down. We know we got at least one instrument that we know it has been used, which is trumpets. Okay, so let me stop share there. And that's from the book of Numbers. Okay, while I'm transitioning, I'm coming back to you. I'm gonna put trumpet.
Professor, let
Go
me
right ahead.
let me you know, you know, by now you know my mind thinks differently.
No problem. I'm gonna pull
But
the PowerPoint up. Keep going.
in this particular passage, uh, and I know some of it could be work. It talks about the trumpet and the use of the trumpet, but it doesn't specifically, and I guess it depends on how you define worship, because it seems like there is the use of this trumpet, but
Yeah.
it doesn't it doesn't appear that the use involves what we would think of as worship in our day and time.
Ah, okay. Okay. Because remember, many times we think of the enclosed church and things like that. They don't have that. They don't have that type of structure just yet.
Right, right, right,
Mhm.
right. So I guess you could broadly, you know, without trying to, whenever you are following God's direction,
Uh-huh.
you could, in a sense, define that as worshiping. Couldn't
Sure
we?
could.
Okay.
You sure could. Mm-hmm. Sure
Obey.
could. Right, right. Remember, it's also a daily a daily living thing.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So you could say if I try to live my life
Yes,
following God, then that in itself is worshiping.
it's worship
Okay.
because the
Good.
center is not Mr. Smith, but the center is adoring and following the Creator God.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yes,
Okay. All right.
yes.
Thank
In
you.
addition to, you're correct, you're welcome. In addition to what individuals have done in the Old and New Testament in community, and when they came together in community to worship, you see what I'm saying? Then certain things were used or certain things were done. Remember, we talked last week about proclamation, um, music, things of that sort. Okay. All right. So we're going to put down in the chat, we saw one instrument already was trumpets.
Mhm.
Okay. Trumpets were also used like we saw in the festivals. Look right here. Somebody can drop this in the chat. A flute.
Flute.
Flutes were also used.
Mhm.
I think that flutes are just one of the most beautiful, or such a beautiful sound.
Mhm.
Flutes were used in temple worship. If you go to, we won't go right now, but if you go a little bit later to First Chronicles chapter 24, verse 6 and 7. First Chronicles 24, chapter 24, 6 and 7. But it's really interesting that Susan White brought this up, is that it mentioned that 88 musicians were needed to accompany temple worship in the period of during the exile. And the exile period is what we read of more in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus, when the Israelites are moving out of Egypt. And so you see, it's really interesting how music plays a part and musicians play a part in worship. So I thought that was really cool that 88 musicians, somebody had to count them, right? 88 musicians.
Yeah.
I know that was wild to count them, were needed to accompany the temple worship. So that tells us that it was pretty important, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's long been some speculation that maybe synagogues that worship in the synagogue, meaning the Jewish synagogues, did not use instruments, but that is not very clear because we believe that even in Old Testament, now remember, Christianity didn't start in Old Testament. You have the birth of Christianity in New Testament. So just reading from what we saw in the book of Numbers, what we just saw here in First Chronicles, you can go to that a little bit later. We already see that somebody's creating instruments, right?
Mm-hmm.
We already see that they're using instruments. We already talked about the flute. We talked about the trumpets. The lyre is another one, a stringed instrument. David played the harp. Was it the harp or the lyre? The stringed instruments. And so you hear that also in the Psalms about praising and worship with instruments. Okay. All right. So it's thought, if you go down to my point on number 5 here on the slide, I hope you can see everything pretty good. It's thought that the early Christians in the New Testament didn't use instruments much, but that's dispelled because we see that worship is found in the book of Revelation. And also when these new churches start to become built or formed, should I say, formalized, after the death and resurrection of Christ, you start to see the apostles and disciples start to go around. They're moving around and they're starting these churches. Paul is one of them. And so we find that there's evidence of music because the book of Revelation was written in the New Testament, written by John, which speaks, about instruments. Okay. So we had, go ahead.
Yeah, this is where it got really interesting. And I mentioned to you, I've done some reading and
go ahead.
It was very interesting because in a lot, and I was reading some of the early church fathers from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd centuries. Yes. Some of their reasoning on why instruments should not be used in the church. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting, they sort of compared it to the use, because I guess they associated the use of instruments with pagan.
That's correct.
Right. And in some cases, some of those early church fathers said that to use instruments showed some immaturity within the faith, that you once that, and I think in the Old Testament instruments were used, but once Jesus came, there really wasn't a need for those instruments because Jesus was enough. I use that word. I'm trying to paraphrase now. But many of those, some of the same ones we studied about in church history. I was reading some of their comments. Was that once we had Jesus, there really wasn't that need. As a matter of fact, there was some even talk that even in Revelations that when they used the term of those instruments, they were actually talking about the body parts, that the body could produce those signs. But it was just an interesting kind of argument to understand how very early on there wasn't any why there weren't instruments.
Why?
It took a long time for instruments actually to start. I think after the 4th century.
Yeah, we actually have a part in that. We're going to actually talk about that. I'm not sure. I think it may come up in today's chapter.
Yeah.
But now, before we go too far, now we don't really have the research that there were no instruments, because we know that there were instruments in Old Testament. So right. For them to just not use them would be different, because we knew that. Now remember, when you look at Psalms, the book of Psalms, right. PS, ALM, with a hymn book. And so Psalms were words, basically the lyrics, right? Written so that they could worship. They would go up to Mount Zion or whatever place of worship that they had, and they would use these to sing. So we know even in the Old Testament writing in Psalms, they mentioned them.
Right.
Yeah, very good. Very good there. All right. Let me ask you something, and I'm flipping around here, and I'm sorry to be looking crazy. Students, are you able to see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I'm telling you, this thing is working me, but I'm so glad you can see it. All right, so I'm gonna keep going, and let's see if you're able to see me move it. All right, now, Mr. Smith, I think this is where you are. Let me know if you can see my PowerPoint. It says things begin to change.
Change, right.
Mm.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And Brenda, you doing okay? Not sure if she's able to talk. Okay. All right. So things begin to change. So this is part of the conversation that Mr. Smith was sharing about instrumental music beginning to change and then having a different feel within organized Christian churches. So we see instrumental music begin to change and have a different appeal around the mid-second century. I think this is what you were talking about, Mr. Smith. Excuse me. As now you have this issue of, remember y'all, in the New Testament, the apostles are moving around. They're establishing churches within Asia, moving up to Europe, to Italy, moving throughout Rome, and they're also encountering opposition. Okay, so now you have this issue of the church is starting to grow and we're trying to do our own thing, but we also live within a society that doesn't understand us. And so problems are starting to arise, and a lot of pagan practices are starting to get muddled with their this new thing called Christianity, if I'll put it like that. So anyway, instrumental music, is beginning to do its thing. And so early church leaders, if you go down to the bottom there, early church leaders disagreed, and they even started to discourage music. And what we mean by discouraging music, it was more so the instrumental music, but then you start to see the return of it around the 7th century. Okay. And you see this, and actually, to tell you the truth, the large area that had disagreement with music is in the European area. So in Europe, those early church fathers had issues with the music. And here's one of the popular instruments. Let's see how we're doing with time. Okay, we're doing pretty good with time. Here's one of the popular instruments, and I'm going to play a link for you in just 1 second. Anybody heard the music of a pipe organ before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it beautiful?
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. So if you look right here, this is a picture of a pipe organ. Oh my goodness, just built into the wall. This is nothing you could take to the house, right? But a pipe organ, those became very popular in Europe around the 700s. And the music it fills up the whole atmosphere, fills up the whole building. It has a range of about 5 octaves, different tones, different timbers. And one of the beautiful things is, now remember we talked about the book of Psalms. One of the beautiful things is, as you start to see during this time frame, also in European churches, you see it's like the writing of hymns. Okay. And so the hymns are now being accompanied with music behind them, which was from the organ. Okay. All right. So let's see if I can, everybody stay right there. And I think what I'm gonna have to do is, yeah, let's see.
I'm on here twice.
Uh-oh, now my video's not working. Hold on, everybody. Hold on, good friends. My video wasn't working. I'm going to pull up another one. Stay right there. And this is going to be an example of the beautiful pipe organ. Stay right there. We're having a technical issue tonight.
There's some too.
All right. Okay, I am going to come right back to you. Let me see if I can play this for you. Always a commercial on YouTube. Here is. One second. Here I come. Are you able to hear it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh. And you see the pipes in the wall. Just listen to that all night. Okay, I could just listen to that all night, but
Me too.
tell me about it. Tell me about it. What does that music do for you? I'm transitioning my screen.
I don't know. I have a feeling that with that kind of music, when you have quote unquote outsiders coming in, when they hear something like that, if they're feeling down or discouraged or whatever, I feel that after they have sat there for a minute, if that music can't change them, I don't know what else can, you know. It'll get their thoughts going and their, you know, it's just, I don't know. That's me. That's me. I don't know, you know, anyone else would even feel that way, but that's just me because I like music in itself.
Music, yes. Yes. Music is very important to the
And it's
atmosphere.
universal. You know, it's universal.
There you go. Universal. Universal. You're right about it. Music is universal. Music is, and whatever, you know, whatever type of religion, but you think about it, music is used as well. Music is used.
Professor Berry.
Yes.
That slide that you showed before this, where we saw the guitar, I think it was the keyboard. But yeah, right there. When you go into some of the smaller organizations or smaller churches, you see something like this, you know, a setup like
That's
that.
right.
That just reminds me that, you know, even from back then, you know, in the Old Testament, that, you know, they, even though we've moved forward, we still use some of the instruments that they, you know, acquired back then.
And very good. And so remember, as the church starts to grow, if you were with me for the church history, or if you're going to take church history a little bit later, as the church starts to grow, right? You get different leaders, and different leaders have different, different opinions. This person said this, and then another leader will come in and say, no, I'm gonna cancel that out and we're gonna do it again. And then another leader comes in and they say no. And then another leader came in and they say, yeah. So the growth of Christianity is also about a lot of back and forth, push and pull, and music is one of those particular areas where, you know, we agreed over here, we didn't agree, and as we move and we talk a little bit more about things like, let's keep going. Let's talk about some of those instruments. Actually, hold on, I'm moving too fast. Hold on. I'm going too fast. We're going to talk about some of those instruments that people didn't like. Okay, we're going to list some of those in just 1 second. All right. So if you look right there, this is a more modern organ. It's not the pipe organ like we saw that was in the walls, right? And in just a second, we're going to take a look at a Mennonite church. Anybody heard of Mennonites?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard of them, but not quite sure exactly what it entails.
Awesome. Awesome. So the Mennonite church does not, they're Christian church, but the Mennonites do not believe in using any type of instruments. And when you hear, I'm going to show you this clip. Oh my goodness. It sounds so beautiful. And actually, there is another church, and it doesn't always have to be Mennonite churches either. There's a church that's around the corner from me. I am going to find the name of it because it's going to make me mad. I want to say it is a Disciple of Christ church. Is it Camp Creek? I'm going to find the name of it. I am so sorry. It is just escaping. It is literally about 10 minutes from my house. And I've that, you know, when you can just see it. I can just see the building, everybody. I can just see the building. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put church. And ladies and gents, when I went to that church, I was just so blown away by the music. And I kept saying, I said, well, where is the piano? I said, oh, where's the piano? Where's the drum? Where's the organ? And the way the people sang, it sounded as if there was a piano. It sounded like there was an organ. It sounded like there were drums. It sounded like there was something behind them. But they used no instruments. That's what I wanted to say. They used no instruments.
Professor.
Go ahead. I'm trying to find this church. Go ahead.
You know, in my reading, this sort of shocked me. The word acapella, acapella,
Acapella.
means comes from a Latin, means church music.
Church music.
And because without instruments, because it came from those early years, and
right.
when they were trying to, as you were talking about all this back and forth, they classified that music without instruments as church music, and that word came from that, and that was that's probably the thing that's really been blowing my mind about this whole little study about instruments.
That's very good. I did not know that about acapella.
I didn't either until earlier in the.
You shared it with. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I found it's called Renaissance Church of Christ. Everybody, it's on. I want to say it's on Butner Road. Butner Road, right off of Camp Creek. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. Beautiful singing. All right, so here we go again. Y'all see my lesson? Here we go again. And so we got another fight. Remember I said the Christian church keeps going through this back and forth, back and forth. I said this, somebody else said this. So everybody go to the top of the page. In the 16th century, the Puritans of the English church, they disagreed with what?
The organ.
With organs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Notice I said a lot of this upheaval is in European areas. And so the English church has this issue with organs. But here's the thing, they were making organs over there. They made the organs.
Yeah, they want to use them in church.
And they signed a petition to get rid of them. So imagine this, everybody. I want you to get in your head. You have these big ornate churches. So it's 16th century. They're building big churches now. And imagine the handiwork it takes to build the organ, to install the organ in the wall and all that good stuff. And now we got to pull it out. All right. Then somebody look right here, the second bullet. What happened in 1644?
Destroy.
Legislation was passed to destroy all organs. Wow.
That was 1644, right. Okay. What happened in 1660?
The ban was lifted and organ building came back. Just like you said, go back and forth, back and forth.
Back and forth. Back and forth. You know, the organ makers are like, really, make up your mind. Now you put us out of business. Now you want us to come back. So you have this back and forth. However, the Mennonite church said, well, look, we're just going to stay back over here. And we're not going to bring the instruments back because we've already gotten used to singing a cappella, and maybe they just really liked it. Okay. They just really liked it. I'm gonna show you. Everybody stay right there. I want to show you this example of Mennonite singing. And okay, Mennonite. I tell you, here it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. You all let me know when you see it. You're gonna see a little church service. They're sitting down. And here I come. And the name of the song is, can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. The name of the song is Have You Been to Jesus? It's about 2 minutes. Well, let's play a little bit of this and listen to, let's just listen.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb, of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless, are you white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you walking daily by the Savior's side? Are you washed in the blood?
So is the baby.
Hear your rescues, moment in the crucified. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb?
Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. The song is Have You Been to Jesus? And what do you observe there? What do you observe there? I'll come back to you. Did you hear any instruments?
Oh, no.
Not at all.
No.
I think they had what, 3 or 4 part harmony. I mean, it was good.
Sure was. It sure was good. So remember, from that previous slide, actually, let me go back. Remember the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So if you're asked, why did the Mennonite Christians why do they practice a cappella? We can say, well, they practice it because they were like, look, we're going to stick with what we have. They probably got good at it, as you can see. They sound so beautifully. So they just continued their band on instruments because they were probably used to doing what was working for them. Okay. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about what happened with instruments as we start to move centuries and centuries later. So by the end of the 18th century, so on the previous slide, we're talking about the 1600s. Excuse me, by the end of the 18th century, you start to see town bands. You start to see music organized more, and people are able to buy instruments for themselves. And town bands started to be pretty popular, and they would play in the rear of the church. But to think about it, that's going to be a problem because they're making too much noise and they're behind the people. Okay. And so now even more instruments are going to start to be barred or banned, should I say, from the church. All right, look over in the top left box. In 1903, what instruments were barred?
Electric instruments, even piano.
Drums,
Wow.
even pianos. Okay. Now let's just pause right there. Let's. Why do you think the drums, pianos, electric instruments? Now think about it. This is early 1900s, maybe late 1800s. Why do you think they were? What was the issue they might have been having with those instruments?
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't say problem because the instruments weren't doing nothing to nobody. That's not the right word.
Maybe too worldly. I see down there.
There you go.
Too worldly.
They might have been thinking that they were too worldly because, now think about it, outside musicians were traveling around and they had to use pianos.
Yeah.
Drums.
Use drums, At that time, you were starting to see in all across, people were having, what would you call it? Maybe clubs or places where people join to sing and dance.
Back in those days, Professor, they call them juke joints.
Juke joint. I see what was also associated with the juke joint. Were we just drinking water?
Oh no. It was white. It was white like water, but
clear like water. But yeah, but that piano, it got to work out in those joints.
Right. The blues music and things like that. Well, we're going a little bit further, but the blues music and things like that, ragtime. It was a piano. Think about it. It was a piano. What was the piano doing for anybody? But the thing about it, it was the perspective of what they thought that this piano was going to do, or the drums were going to do. They thought that some instruments were more secular or worldly than others. And I mean, just think about it. It's an instrument. What could the instrument do?
It had to be played by a human, right?
Right. It had to be played by a human.
Depends on what they were playing on those instruments. So I guess that's when it came into play that, you can't use these drums and these pianos because y'all playing this other kind of secular music.
Yeah, so it's a lot of I would say misinterpretation. And the poor instruments, they're like, look, we're created to make music and y'all don't want us to make music. So here's the thing. The church leaders also have this I don't want to call it war, but also a misinterpretation of the musicians themselves.
Mm.
And many times when people have a gift, they have a gift. Oh my goodness. When I watch our musicians play those, oh my, it's just so beautiful. I'm just so in awe. And anybody that can play an organ, oh my, I love to see it. Their whole body is into it. But the church leaders at that time, now we're talking about end of 18th century, there's this war between the leaders and the musicians because they felt that if you get this instrument, it's going to be about you and your gift, and you're going to be too self-indulged on the piano or the drum. And that's what it shouldn't be about that.
Professor, excuse me.
Mhm.
I got another important meeting I got to go to, so I'm
Okay.
But
All right.
I'll get all my work in. Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy.
All right. We're about to head off though. No worries. Okay. And then we're about to end right here. So the gifts of the musician, everybody sees right there at the bottom, can greatly impact and enhance the quality of the worship experience. And so we're so thankful for musicians that they have whatever talent they have to play whatever this instrument is, because not everybody can do that.
Right.
You know, not everybody can do that. We read about how David played the harp and how David moved individuals. And I wanted to go to Psalms tonight. We may have to do it next week, but David moved the heart of individuals because of his skill in playing the harp.
Right.
Because of his skill in playing the harp. And I just thought that was just so awesome that, let me hit stop share right here. I thought that was just so awesome that we examined that, because many times the musicians are ostracized, but they're only wanted for their gift. And we saw that, like in our history, like in the 18th, 19th century, where the leaders were kind of pushing them away. And then later on, we start to see them. I mean, you can't find a musician nowadays.
Yeah.
They need them so bad. All right. So I know I've been talking a lot. Let me just pause for a second. Brenda, are you there? Are you able to talk? How you doing? Just wanted to check in with you, make sure you're okay. I'm not sure if her thing is working. Maybe it's not working. Okay. Maybe not. All right. So we're going to pause right here. Any questions for me? Let me see if I can get back to you all. No questions? Okay. Well, we are going to pause right here. Don't forget to do your discussion week 2 for this week. Okay. Make sure you respond to your classmates, and I'll be jumping in there very soon to respond back to you.
Okay.
And be grading those on, well, they're due Sunday night. I'll put it like that, due Sunday night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I hope everybody's feeling well. You have a good evening, and I will see you next week. Okay. Take care.
Have a good weekend. Stay warm.
You too. You too.
Bye-bye.
Take care of yourself.
Okay.
Take care. All right. Brenda, how you doing? You take care. Guess you might be frozen.
Wow.
Well, Mike's not working. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Night.
Good night.